Good morning, good morning, good morning. Yes, good morning, people. Good morning. This is Spirit Journey. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This beautiful, beautiful Saturday morning. Yes, it is Easter Eve. Today is Saturday, April 8th, 2023. Yeah, I put down by mistake April 9th, but it's the 8th, April 8th, 2023. The time 7:12 in the AM. Yep, and you can also see up in the clouds a chemtrail already. Yep. Yeah, sometimes here in New York City where I live, the sky could be a perfect blue sky. The very, very blue, baby blue. And then you get these chemtrails. And all of a sudden, this feathery look comes out from those clouds. Like you can see it starting to spread right now. And they do this. Yet they're talking about health and all that in the media, why people are getting sick. Don't you think these things in the clouds could contribute to certain things? You see that chemtrail? You see it? Yeah. A lot of those things that you see in the sky are not clouds. Years ago, actually, yeah, what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to wing it. Yeah, it's Easter Eve, and this season always gets me very reminiscent of the time when, growing up here in New York City when I was a child. Yeah, I would remember seeing especially the little girls in the neighborhood. You see them walking past the house, my folks' house, and they're wearing those little party dresses, the the light yellows, baby blues and pinks. Yeah, I remember that. That's what I remember most about Easter. But the season of Easter, because Easter doesn't fall on the same day. It doesn't. It all falls on the Sunday. But if I understood right, that I think it's the first, what's that, a week after, or like the first Sunday after the first full moon after a particular event, something like that. Those of you who know, you can share that information. But the Easter actually is a day that it has nothing to do with the resurrection of the Christ, but is commemorated based on astrological positioning, and that's really something. Yeah, it's like a celebration of the moon because it's based on the status of the moon. Isn't that something, people? Isn't that something? It used to be Easter in New York City, used to be very popular. It was a real holiday. It was celebrated with the paraphernalia, like the women's, little girls' dresses, um, candies. The schools used to have the kids draw pictures of Easter Bunny. I didn't know. I mean, I'm a city girl, born and raised here in New York City. I didn't know that rabbits don't lay eggs. I didn't know that. Rabbits don't lay eggs. Rabbits are mammals, meaning that they give live births like people. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought, oh, okay, eggs. But I think it's fascinating the decorations of those eggs. I do remember um, my my mother. I remember she had eggs and she'll put it in dyes, these colored dyes. You know, that I remember. I mean, she wasn't heavily into that, but it's something that I do remember. And you know what else would I remember? I remember the candied apples. Remember that? Oh God, hey, I better check out some places. Yeah, a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of the candy stores, you know, they're gone now. They used to sell candied apples. Yeah, you get the apples. And yeah, I'm pretty sure they did this in the Easter also. Yes, I know Halloween, yeah. But I think they also did it for Easter. They take the apples, put it on a stick, and then they would dunk it in this red sugar syrup. And when it dry hard. And they also do it in caramel too. Yeah, do I remember right, people? They get the apples. Oh, if I can find a candied apple, I have to be careful because I don't want to break another tooth. I told you guys I had broken two teeth in the back. Yes, I did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I made these homemade pickles that tasted awesome. Yeah, you can make your own pickles. And I had the jar way in the back of the refrigerator, and they were super cold. I didn't know it was gonna, I wasn't trying to keep them that cold, but yeah, I put it back there, and yeah, it got cold. And I bit into that bad boy. It tasted awesome, but man, it was cold. And then I foolishly, after eating the homemade pickles, spicy pickles, I had some tea, I think tea with lemon and honey. And then that wasn't enough. Then I wanted to eat these little chips. I forget what you call them, some type of chip. I forget what they're called. It could have been doodles, these, whatever. I bit into it, and when I started crunching, this weird sensation in my mouth, and then followed by pain, and then something came loose. People, I broke my tooth, my one of my molars. And then like 5 minutes after that, people, the other tooth in the same exact position, but on the opposite side of my jaw, bingo, did the same thing. Yeah. Yeah, people be really, really careful about your teeth, Uh, we're eating hot and cold things, and yeah, the tooth was already compromised, I guess. Had a fracture, and then when the extreme cold, yeah, you gotta be careful. Yeah, but that's what happened. But yeah, I'm very reminiscent of Easter because it was one of those days that I wasn't raised in any in any religion, but you see religion around you. The television shows about the resurrection, of Jesus. You'll have, yeah, that was a big thing. Um, but mostly, I remember the children wearing their Sunday best and the candy. Yeah, I remember that. And but here in New York, in Manhattan, um, the demographics has changed such. Um, yeah, I think Easter is really like a North American type of thing. Um, but now with the migration, people have different traditions. And I mean, I should say with Easter in America that it's a commercialized. That's what I'm getting. It's commercialized, heavily, heavily commercialized. while other places more about tradition rather than commercialization. Um, but I'm reminiscent of that part of my life. And yeah, so I never got those the little dresses, whatever. And I think maybe I was a little resentful. Yeah, I'm being honest, people. You know, I was a little girl, and I don't know. I just didn't feel happy uh, during this time. And but I think now as an adult, and I put a smile on my face about those pretty little yellow dresses. I do love yellow. And the baby blue. I love baby blue and the pinks. And I remember my fourth grade class, Miss Russo. Yes, there was a Miss Russo. And she lived out in Long Island. And I respect her. Yes, she was a um, Caucasian woman. Yeah, back in those days, in the early 70s, in black neighborhoods, you had white teachers working in a black district. That's what it was like. But you know, Miss Russo, more power to her. You know, when I think of her, I actually put a smile on my face. Yeah, people like teachers like Miss Russo. Yes, they're not from that neighborhood, but you know, they were teachers at heart. They were. Yeah, more power to her. Yes, yes. Happy Easter Eve, Miss Russo. Yes, she passed away many, many years ago. But when I think of her, I have the utmost respect. Yes, she wasn't afraid of corporal punishment. Oh yes, yes, she'll spank those kids. But she was a fair teacher. She was. You know, she hit me before. Yes, I didn't like it. I didn't deserve it. But either way, uh, I, I I have utmost respect when I think of Miss Russo and teachers like Miss Russo, teachers at heart. And yes, some of the kids gave her a bad time, but she persevered. Boy, she kept. I don't know whether I would have kept there. I mean, they had those students who were um, real challenging, had their challenging moments. But I remember that Easter day. So it had to be in 1972. And I remember the little grass, like they have this thing that's supposed to be grass, and we put it in a little basket. I remember that. We draw. Oh, I put a smile on my face. I could see myself now in the classroom. Yeah, I was like in the center of the room, you know, in the middle, center middle. I remember that. Yeah, I had the center aisle. And oh, wow, I think about that. Yeah, you guys ever think about your time during Easter? What do you do in your classroom? What are children doing now? Because here in New York City, you got everything, everyone. Yeah, and so, you know, now it's about uh, rights and not teaching religion and things like that or traditions in classroom. So I wonder now, in a place like New York City where you got everybody, everything, what do they do during the Easter season? You know, just before, you know, now this week, I think it's like last week, I think the students had off for the week. Yeah, because also you have Passover. Yeah, Passover and Easter holiday, they intersect. Yeah, Passover started Wednesday evening. So Easter falls right in the middle of Passover week. Wow. Yeah, that's something. Yeah, and both holidays are based on the uh, the the position of the planets, the moon in particular. Yeah, what position the moon, what phase of the moon is. Isn't that something? So, is it about religion or is it about the um, these celestials, you know. Isn't that something? So, I mean, it's all good, you know. Uh, there's always reason for things, and when you really find out what is the meaning behind certain holidays, just like you say, "Wow, isn't that something?" So, yeah, it's something that you could do more research in. But I wonder, hey, it just coming to my mind now. Now, if these holidays are based on what position certain celestial bodies are in, why would that be important? So it's a clock. It's like a time clock. The celestials act and they serve as a clock, I guess. It's to inform. But you know what I'm thinking? What if, now I know this is odd. I personally believe that there's beings out on those other celestial bodies. Yes, I believe that. I believe that there's civilizations out there outside of Earth. And I believe that certain positions of these celestial bodies, like the moon, that they harvest, get this, that they are harvesting your energy at that time. Because, see, the churches or the synagogues or the mosque or the temples, whatever what you want to call them, house of worship, you gather as a collective. Yes, you gather and then you worship. And what is worship? You are sending out your energy to someone or something. So when you sing praises, accolade, accolades, and the like, your energy slash your intention is being sent out into the universe and they are feeding off of you. They're feeding off of your energy. Yes, they are. So, why then is the moon in particular of this holiday for Easter? Because I think they said, you know, see, Easter never falls on the same day. It's always based on something. And it's based on, if I remember right, I'm sorry, my voice is going. If I remember right, it's the first Sunday after the first full moon from, I think, summer, something like that. The first Sunday. Those of you who know definitively, but I know it's the first something based on a particular position of the moon, phase of the moon, I should say, the phase of the moon. So, what is the moon? Well, some people say that it's a man-made structure, and it sends. Oh, that it's a weird sound that just came from the computer. Yeah, I'm on my device right now. It just did it for a couple of seconds. Yeah, something must be tapping into my device right now. Yeah, it's very slight, but I can pick it up. It's like a weird echo or something. I have my mic on, but but it can still be detected. I'm just letting myself know that. So if I play back what was going on at the time, yeah, it's about a little after 7:30 in the morning right now. But yeah, certain positions of the, phases of the moon, um, you have, I believe, um, it's like a satellite. It's a man-made satellite, but it gets its frequency. See, the moon is very important because it sends signals onto the earth. So it's very essential, its positioning and this relationship it has with planet Earth. But the moon uh, gets its signals, I was told, from Saturn. That's right, Saturn. Saturn that has those rings around that planet, or whatever what you want to call it, and it's a broadcaster. Saturn is a broadcaster of information. It sends the information to the moon, and from the moon it bounces to planet Earth. And I believe that planet Earth is a prison planet. It's a planet where people's energy is harvested. So whether you're working on a plantation or whether you're in church, whatever, it's about extracting your energy, your praises, or whatever, and it's broadcast back to the moon and probably from the moon back to Saturn. Yeah, so if you read the Old Testament, everything is like clockwork based on the position of the heavenly bodies. And what those heavenly bodies have to do with people here on earth, I don't know. But I believe in hindsight, what it's about harvesting your energy. They need you. You don't need them. They need you. And so they set up these holidays, holy days. You don't benefit, but it does. And it takes your praise, your worship, your music, songs, and it harvests this energy for its own edification. That is my opinion based on things that I've heard over the internet. And in analysis, why would a particular phase of the moon, what relevance? And I did over time talk about this time of people worshiping, people going to church. Don't you notice churches or temples or synagogues or mosques, you know, don't you notice those buildings have this long, long tower? Start noticing. What is a tower? Well, tower has certain things. One, it can see in the distance. Two, it's further up, so it's less interference with buildings, other buildings. And usually, historically, the places of worship were always the tallest buildings around them. You go to the West Indies, let's say, you go to the villages, and the church is always in the center of that town, and it's the tallest structure. Well, as you can see here in this monitor that you're looking through, well, you see a lot of tall buildings. See, now people, the church is competing with the corporations. Yes, you have major corporations and they're all vying for power. And so they want to make their buildings taller and taller than the one next to them, vying for access to signals. Uh, Perhaps some of these buildings, they have meetings, private meetings. Remember the movie? There was a movie with, oh, what's that guy's like? Keanu Reeves. What was it? The Advocate, I think it's called. He played a lawyer. Oh, Devil's Advocate. What were they doing in those buildings? Remember that one? What were they doing in that building? They were doing these rituals. They were doing rituals in these buildings. Just, I'm just looking at the skyline here. There's some of these buildings. I know what they are. I know who owns them. Yeah, and I could just imagine what they're doing in these things. Yep, they got the what do you call it? Not satellite. What do you call it? Yeah, satellite. the ring. What do you call that? The disc. What do you call those things? That the satellite sends signals to it, and then you can get your, let's say, television stations. Satellite disc. That's it, satellite disc. Yeah, they're picking up signals. Yep. They can receive it and they could send it out. It's amazing. It's amazing. I didn't know I was going to talk about that. But it's something when you really start looking, you start to see the world in a different way, people. You start to see the world um, seeing through it. Like on the surface, you just see pretty buildings, right? But when I see them, I'm seeing them as antennas. They are reaching up for signals and they're vying for that access. They're vying for access of those frequencies. What else? Yeah. So now, Easter Eve, I should say, Easter Eve is Easter Eve. So things are quieting down though with the holidays like Easter. Um, yeah, it's very quiet in New York City now because, there's a new demographics and they're not into the commercialization what Easter was for the past 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. Yeah, yeah. Right after the war, World War II, it was a lot of commercialization, and so I would say like from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that things were really becoming more commercialized and people making money off of that. But now it's really, the streets are really quiet. And yeah, so I think about the time, reminiscing about the neighborhood that I used to live in. I lived in Queens, New York, yes. I lived in Queens, a residential area. Um, and there weren't, back then, there weren't that many churches. There was one down the block. It was a Presbyterian church. Yeah, the Presbyterian churches, they tend to have more money, or the people that go there. It's a money denomination. They tend to have richer congregants that go there. And then you have the Pentecostal ones that started coming in later, and they tend to cater to more modest income. And yeah, so the neighborhood that I lived in, as time went on, became more and more these what they call places of worship. They became more numerous than regular stores. And this was in the black community. Yeah, the neighborhood that I come from is a place called Hollis, Queens. Yes, Hollis. Hollis. The village started, I think, around 1887. And it was a farm area. It had a lot of farmland uh, around the area. And then it developed. Predominantly, it was a what you call a white neighborhood, Anglo-Saxon. And our family moved in the area in the latter 1960s. Yeah, just before Reverend Martin Luther King died. Yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. Yeah, yeah, we moved in before he got it taken out. And we had white neighbors. They were friendly. Yeah, I would say that, yeah, the house that was bought was owned by a doctor, and he was to move out in Long Island. Yeah, Hollis is one of those typical neighborhoods in New York City that it started out with one race, and then black folk moved in, and all the infrastructure of the prior community, they took it with them. Horrible. It's horrible. So imagine people, uh, you see something that you like, you save up all your life to have a down deposit for a beautiful home and community. See, you're not just buying a house, you're buying a community. You're buying a community. And then you bought that house with the expectation of community. And slowly but surely, all the infrastructure, the stores left. But to move into these houses, the people who moved into them, the value of the property and the taxes that are now going to be imposed upon this property increase. So even though you made the neighborhood richer through the taxation of the property, the value of the property, but you don't get the same services, and the people take the services with them. Yeah. So this what happens. And so I'm thinking back, the 1960s, and thinking that, yeah, I was just a little girl. I was 4 when I moved in. I was going on 5. And I remember how the neighborhood changed over time. Yeah, so it used to be, by the time we moved in, um, it was predominantly black, but on immediate neighbors were Caucasian, and the schools were all black by this time. Also, they were doing in New York City what they call busing. So a year after I moved in, I started school, and I was bused into another community, and I didn't understand what was going on, but yeah, I remember. Yeah, so my first school was integrated. We stayed there, I think, one semester, and then we went to a school in our neighborhood, which was all black. But um, we had white teachers. Yeah, there were a handful of black teachers at the school. I had a total of 2 black teachers my whole time in that school. Uh, I had a math teacher. Oh no, 3. I'm sorry. Yeah, I had a social studies teacher. She taught black history. And then we had a math teacher, and then another teacher. She taught general studies. Yeah, 3 teachers. And that was during my 4th and 5th, wait a minute, my 5th grade. Yeah. So it's really something when you have a demographics and your early development from kindergarten to 4th grade, um, or European, or Caucasians. So it could affect your identity of who you are. And I think that's what happened to me too. But um, yeah, but um, you still had a sense of order. I mean, order out of chaos. Yeah, a lot of the students, and the students that were acting up were poorer students that, yeah, they're from a hard life. Yeah, primarily. And then the students that had both parents in the home, they seem to do better. Yeah. So there was social engineering happening in these black neighborhoods. And yeah, I mean, this was a what was considered a nice neighborhood. It was a residential area, homeowners. But slowly but surely, you had the taking over of drugs. Then you start to wonder, you start to ask yourself, how could something like this happen? You have people who are hardworking people who had the ability to save a dollar to purchase these beautiful homes. Um, what happened? But somehow you had these other forces at large. So part of the socialization was to have in your schools, to force you into schools where the teachers did not look like you. They had access to um, tell you what curriculum and some of the things that were subliminal messages that, like you weren't clean, that I noticed they emphasized in storybooks about color that someone was dirty and you had to wash off the. I remember. I remember these things. Don't you think that might be sublimination to teach people of color, as they call it, that something was wrong with them and that white is considered clean? I mean, that it is what it is. So, also it turned out that drugs. Yeah, we had a portion in Hollis up the road that was the commercial district. And honey, that's where all those rap artists lived. Yeah, that like, what's his name? What's his name? Richard Sim, Simpson? Something like that. What's his name, people? Yeah, he's from Hollis. And that part up the road, the commercial section. Yeah. So it's like that certain portions, the commercial district was put under fire, spiritually speaking, and a lot of drugs and a lot of gang violence. Yeah, I was shielded from that part. Yeah, I lived on the other part of town, um, but it was there. Um, so what about that in Easter now? What am I getting at? I'm getting at that you have happening. See, change happens constantly. And what I'm aware of right now, that what you think is happening like overnight, it's not happening overnight. This is a progression. And you have people who study, like remember the movie, if you haven't seen it, the movie, oh, what's that name? Jim Carrey. Um, The Truman Show. Yes. The Truman Show is a good example. Remember at one point in the Truman Show, you had a person, an older man with the white hair, oh no, he didn't have the white hair, but he was like looking like at a globe and looking down at the people. Excuse me. Well, I think you have things that are like that. You have people who are overseeing, looking down at communities, and they're observing, and they are orchestrating certain things upon your community. Like a place like Hollis. Places like Hollis are created. These people work really hard. You had blacks and West Indian people, and they bust their, you know what, off to try to be equal to their white counterpart. And right next to our community would be a very thriving white and Jewish neighborhood. And somehow they didn't have the same type of crime. Their schools were immaculate. The lawns were always immaculate, even on the school grounds. Somehow they're just thriving. And see, these neighborhoods in the United States, at least, are created and they are tapped. Yeah, the blacks in America, uh, at least in this domain, serve as the energy, like a battery source for neighboring communities. And that's what I noticed. So they even set up these churches and stuff as battery sources for these celestial bodies. Money is siphoned also. I learned that the money in these uh, communities, black communities, that the money, yes, someone had shared this over the social media. and their life was threatened too. Um, there were these churches, and you had an honest woman. She was a what do you call it, like a bookkeeper, some or a CPA, one of those type of people. And she was balancing the books, trying to, and but she noticed that something was missing, and there was a computer that she did her work with computers in management of this money, tracking the money. And she noticed that this money was missing, and she, like in the computers, they have what they call the back door of the computer, uh, and where things are hidden. And she discovered this back door that money from these churches, these black churches, and I'm sure there are other churches too, not just black people, but anybody who could be suckered, okay? They use anybody's energy source to do this. But I'm just saying that they're doing in this particular community that I'm a part of. But either way, this money was being out, siphoned out, and being brought into this. I'm not going to give the name of the country, but it's in a place called the Middle East that's right next to Egypt. That's all I'll say. Okay? The money's going there. Isn't that something? And now, in that particular country, you cannot, they're making more rules now about what you can say in that country. I think, the J word, Jesus, you can't say that word in that country. Some controversy now. You can't say that word, even though that person came from that part of the world, but you can't say that word. Isn't that something? So I'm seeing here that this money, see, life is about an exchange of energy, and the real war is a war of energy. Who could collect the most energy? Who can harvest that energy and then send it out? Like crop. Who has the largest crop and then you ship it out. So a place like Hollis, it's making a lot of money, but they're not thriving off of their own hands. The money is being siphoned out of places like Hollis or St. Albans, Queens. St. Albans, Queens, it's the neighboring area right next to Hollis. And I think that area was even more prosperous at one time. Yeah, the homes there are even larger. But look what happened. Look what happened. So these areas seem to be designed, and it's like we're being followed. Certain communities are followed in the United States. You're followed over time and you're harvested. So even though chattel slavery ended, but the harvesting off of your back has not stopped. The money is being taken out of your neighborhood and being trafficked over into that country in the Middle East that's next to Egypt. So they thrive off of you and you're starving. And somehow all these things are being done in your neighborhood, like somehow these weapons get into your neighborhood. Not schools, not like colleges or um, vocational schools, but somehow these weapons get in your neighborhood and these drugs get into your neighborhood and are hurting you. What are they doing with these bodies? You think they're going to just for the funeral home? Are you being harvested, people? Are you being harvested? I know it sounds grisly. It's awful when, it's awful what I'm saying, what I'm alluding to. Um, this could be a reality of many, many communities in America or around the world. Okay. Yeah, I'm reminiscent. I always reminisce this time of year, uh, Easter Eve. Yeah, tomorrow is Easter. And it just have a different feel now in New York City. Yeah, the whole demographic is changing. So when I got up this morning, I was thinking about my hometown in Queens, in Hollis, Queens, where I still have family. And I think about those times when I was young. And the last time I went to visit family, yeah, the area is changing. I mentioned this before. Um, I was approached by this one man. He looked like he was from Central America. And he asked me a question. He said, "Oh, who is this person?" Because there's a little uh, triangle, with grass, where we wait for the bus, and a little sign, commemorating, this person who used to reside in this neighborhood. And he asked, he says, "Hey, I like history, or who's this person?" So I told him. I said, "Oh, this is a remarkable woman who just lived right down the road to that big fancy white house down the road there. And she made this triangle happen. She personally went out and took care of the lawn, planted flowers and everything. She was part of the beautification committee." Yeah. You have people who may move into, who are moving into this area where I was raised in for, uh, yeah, we're there over 55 years. Over 55 years. We moved in, and they really didn't want us there. And then I shouldn't say it like that, but it's what you call white flight. Okay, it's a typical scenario, white flight. But you did the best you could with what you have. And despite what outside forces were doing upon this neighborhood. But now there is a new dispensation happening in the neighborhood. And you have a, a large influx of people from other parts of the Americas. And it's a feeling that I'm getting, a feeling of that they're better, and that they're getting something, and that they're better than us now. But what I say in my heart, I say, something? Make this neighborhood better. Make it better. So you had a lot of, the predecessors who lived there because they wanted to make something better with their lives, and they wanted the American dream. And they opened, this is the main thing, people. They opened the door for these people who are moving in now. They opened the door for access for people from other parts of the Americas, other parts of Asia. We opened up doors for them through legislation, through the Civil Rights Act. Yet people who died so that you can come in to the United States, and when you get discriminated against, you have the law behind you to protect you. That's what my generation and the generation before me did for all these people who are moving in. Hollis is one of those communities that now, again, I'm not anti-immigration, but I'm seeing and I'm feeling the sentiment. See, what I'm perceiving in these places like Hollis, Queens, that has been a solid community, but ravaged with the drugs and the weapons. These were homeowners that worked really hard. These were people, they had their degrees. They had their you had lawyers, you had school teachers, you had people who worked in factories, you had people who really worked hard. And now, with all this social engineering, the community that I come from can no longer afford those homes. No longer could afford it. And so we're forced, many of us are forced now to move back down south, okay? But you have the new people who are moving in, and they're haughty. It's like a haughty spirit. Like they made it, but how dare you live in this neighborhood? That's what I'm feeling. My family's been here for over 55 years in this neighborhood. And they take it for granted the beauty of this community that I come from. Like they made it happen. No, communities like mine, we open the doors for these other people who are now flocking and moving into areas like Hollis or St. Albans or Jamaica, Queens. We've opened the door for them. We've advocated for them. And now they're in. And now they're like making me feel like it's not even my neighborhood anymore. My mother still lives in this neighborhood. Over her back. We made the neighborhood. We did the best we could. And now I feel like we're being swept under the rug now. Like they made the neighborhood. They just move in. They're not even U.S. citizens. And it's like I feel like a slap in the face. And that's what I'm upset about. That when someone comes in and gets it relatively easy, and they think that they got it on their own backs, and they take for granted of the predecessors who died, who fought to make things possible for everybody else. The civil rights movement was for everybody. And now they'll see a face like mine and think you don't belong here. And it's like, wow, this is what I feel. The powers at large allows them enterprise. See, the difference between my generation and the new generation is that my generation, they didn't want us to enterprise. They didn't want us to start up businesses. They didn't want us to have schools that taught a curriculum that was to empower them. Somehow everybody else around us were able to thrive. And the new demographics, they're allowed to keep their language, their religion. They can start businesses. They can start networks. They can get bank loans. And you don't have the cops chasing them and shaking them down for money. They are allowed enterprise. And that is in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, that is the main difference that I see with communities like Hollis or St. Albans or places like that, and the new demographics. How is it that people who just here, just moved in, are able to establish these businesses if they come from so called third world nations? They're not even US citizens, but they're thriving. They have to work hard, yes. Nothing is going to be given to you, but that resistance is not there. You don't have things on the news that these people are being racially profiled when they're in their car. I've never heard it. I don't hear of people from certain countries being frisked by the cops, them putting their hands in the guy's private parts, having them to strip their clothes off to make sure they're not hiding anything. I don't see it. They're allowed into Ivy League schools. Yes, they have to work hard. If you want to get into Ivy League school, you better work hard. But I remember in communities that I came out from Hollis, yeah, back in the day, the schools were, strict. There was corporal punishment when I was in school. And it comes to my memory regarding, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, but you had some people, and I think they were of Caribbean ancestry, but, back in those days, people, immigrants back then, they assimilated. They learned the language, the culture, the customs, the dress, everything. They became American. They were Americanized. And they went to the school. They wanted the American dream, and they worked hard in school. Yeah, back in those days, you had some top-notch students. I remember this one student. I knew right away she was different. How she dressed. She wore this big blue bow in her hair. Yeah, she was a Caribbean girl. Yep. Yeah, they're real old fashioned. Yeah, the West Indies was real old fashioned, boy. She had a big, big, big briefcase, the entache case. It was the first day of school. I said, "Why is she having this big bag?" She didn't get her books yet. Yeah, she see the difference between me and her. That girl came prepared. So that's a message, people. Come prepared. Whether it's the first day of school or not, you make sure you get your big briefcase, uh, handbag, whatever you call it, or what do you call it, a backpack. So you have your pens, your pencils, your markers, your rulers, your dictionary, your paper, and you come prepared that first day. People like that girl. I did have the honor of calling her about 11 years ago, 11, 12 years ago. I had the honor of calling her. Yeah, that was in the ninth grade when I first saw her. We were both going up the hill to school, to high school. I was actually designated to go to a different high school. Sorry, my batteries are getting low now. Yeah, I have my plug. I should get my butter. Oh, wait a minute. Sure, I have to hurry up. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I admire this person. She was a woman of personal excellence. She was in extra honor classes, and yes, she got into Harvard back in the day. Yeah, actually, I was told by her uh, when I spoke to her like 10 years ago, no, I mean 12 years ago. She told me that there was a handful of people. They selected, they knew how many black people they wanted to enter that school, Harvard, at that time. I don't know whether it was a special program, but but it was a deliberate um, action of that school of Harvard to recruit X number of blacks at that time. But these were blacks of high excellence, high excellence. And I remember there were some other people I found out. They went to, one sister went to Harvard, the other one to Yale back in the 1970s. These people scored 100% on the Regents exams. So these weren't people who were given handouts. There were no handouts being given back then in the 1970s, 1960s. These black people or West Indian people, they were top-notch people, and they got into these schools. But now it's like pulling teeth. See, schools like Harvard and Yale, I don't know what that program, but it's like they decide, okay, this was it. And yeah, these people, they graduated. One went into medicine. The woman that I knew, she was started out for medicine, but she decided to get her MBA instead. But I think back, Hollis had top-notch people. That's what I'm getting at. You had these neighborhoods. It may not have been as flourishing as other neighborhoods, but it was our neighborhood, and we wanted to make it work. And you had people of excellence. And then you also had social engineering telling you that um, you weren't worth anything. But I'm telling you what it was like. You had people who performed, who were hardworking. And now, in the present, now it's like uh, people of my blacks in New York City now, we can't afford these homes. And you have people from other countries in the world um, who are able to acquire these properties, and new people, and then they put the nose up in the air against you because you're not thriving. And I'm hurt about this because, see, they don't know what it took for these past 55 years to keep the neighborhood, to help it to where it is. So now it's being pretty much handed over by new people, and they think they got it easy. But it was social, they feel that they did it all on their own. That's what I'm getting at. But no, you had people, predecessors, who did the heavy work, who made it possible for them to enter the country. You have a lot of black activists who say, hey, you got to let other people in, other minorities. But they didn't realize that these new minority groups despise you. They set up shops, and they use your money, to make themselves rich, and then they don't want you to be customers anymore. And that's the sad part. That is the sad part about certain neighborhoods in New York City, that people forget that you have people who sacrifice, just like the character in the Bible, Jesus. He too sacrificed so that others could live, so that others could see how the ropes work. So yes, this is Easter Eve, the eve before Easter. And no, I'm no longer a Christian, but there are things that you can learn from holidays, spiritual messages behind it, that don't forget that someone came before you and sacrificed for you to show you the way. Don't despise the hand that helped you get to where you are. Yes, you see neighborhoods in New York City, you see black people with their pants sagging down. You see them with guns and drugs and horrible, horrible things that are being done to one another. But it wasn't always like that. You had people who come from these neighborhoods in New York City that were at one time trying to thrive, but social engineering got the best of us. And we thought by reaching out to other communities, so-called other minority uh, communities or immigrant communities, that to stand up for them for their equal rights, not realizing that these people that you help with the civil rights movement, that they despise you now and they think they got what they got empty-handedly. And that's not true. It is not true. Am I speaking truth, people? Am I speaking truth? And no, this is not an anti-immigrant um, speech. I'm just reminding people that life is what it is, and that what comes up comes down. And sometimes you have innocent people who become vilified and maybe even start to act like a villain. But it wasn't always like this. You have communities like Seneca Village. Seneca Village, I talked about Seneca Village. It was a village in what we know as Central Park. And the former slaves, yes, New York City had slaves. It ended the slave trade earlier than the rest of America. But the former slaves moved up north. Yeah, the slaves of New York City was in downtown Manhattan. And you had a large European immigration, and they were clashing with the former slaves, Africans. And so these former slaves trekked up north to they acquired this property. Someone found out that they were selling property up north in what we call, Upper Manhattan. And they started community, and it was thriving. And then it was taken away. Yes, you also had whites there also. So you had an integrated community in the 1850s. I forget what was it, 1830s, 40s, 50s, and it was thriving. And then you got an organization, and a rich organization, and they wanted to create a large garden like they see in Europe. And the people were given 1 year to leave because it was being taken over. And yes, they created what we know today as Central Park. But that whole generation of blacks that lived there, they're gone. No one can find a trace of any of those original inhabitants of post slaves that lived in what we know today as Central Park. The location in Central Park is around 70, in the 70s, 70 something street on the west side. Yeah, I went and I did a live stream there a couple of years ago, maybe 3, 4 years ago. Yeah, so you can find that on my channel. I did it live and I showed everything. Life changes. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we have a new dispensation, but always remember, nothing is what you believe that it is. You have communities go up and communities go down. But I say, for the hearer, the listener of this live stream, that we're to be humble servants, and to love one another. Yes, love one another. One day you may need help. One day you might be, you might be on top now, but in the future something happens. There are social things happening very, very quickly. Things that are happening in the government very, very quickly. And you have to be prepared. You have to try to know someone, because life, I believe, is going to get very challenging. And it's going to be challenging for everybody. So I said, walk in humility this Easter. Tomorrow is Easter. Walk in humility, because life is, life is what it is. And you always had someone up there in the forefront, like a type of Jesus, like a Mahatma Gandhi, like a Mother Teresa, and all those other names that I don't even know about that is out there, who sacrificed their time, money, and life so that you could be comfortable or have a chance in life. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. How could I forget Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, all those other predecessors, Frederick Douglass, Harriet, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, all these people. And they all have input on what we have today. Don't take for granted what is given to you. And remember that you too, people will be watching you. If you can make Hollis a better place, make it better. But remember your predecessors who helped you acquire what you have today. Yes, walk in humility, walk in grace, and everyone have a fantastic, fantastic Easter Sunday. If you're going to meet family, have a great time with your family. If you have your little pets, be good to your pets, okay? Have a very wonderful Saturday and Sunday here in New York City and every place in the world. Peace, love, joy, and harmony to you all. I thank you, okay? Bye bye.